All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our May Vermont Early Childhood State Advisory Council meeting. I can't believe it's May 27th already. Happy to have you all today. My name is Dr. Morgan Crossman. I'm the Executive Director for Building Bright Futures, and we are really excited to have everyone here for today's meeting. This is one of my favorite meetings of the year. Those of you who know me well know that my favorite meeting of the year is Data Super Bowl, which is State of Vermont's Children. This is my second favorite meeting of the year, and you're also going to hear some data and findings on the network engagement process. But part of the reason that Building Bright Futures loves this meeting in particular is that it's our opportunity to come together to rededicate our commitment to the strategic plan, to the vision, the priorities we've set on behalf of kids and families over the last 5 years. We're going to hear from our consultants and celebrate all of what we heard and learned from our network engagement process that was conducted over the past 4 months. That actually was used to inform our strategic plan priorities and strategies for the next year. We are going to actually present and then gather feedback on all of the different strategies in the first draft of the strategic plan update, and that's going to be done in small groups. And I said present, but what I meant was I hope that you have opened that document and taken a look. And if not, that is your cue right now that we're going to be reviewing different sections of the strategic plan in small groups this afternoon, organized by goal and breaking those down. So really important feedback and opportunity to hear your thoughts on what's there, what's missing, what you're excited about. And then we're going to wrap with a discussion of the timeline and the process for updating the next iteration of the strategic plan. Just so that you have a heads up, we are going to be working on drafts throughout the summer. This is not your only opportunity to provide feedback. We are looking to have endorsement by our State Advisory Council in October. So Beth is going to walk us through a little bit more about our strategic plan process.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. I'm Beth Trzanski. I'm the Deputy Director of Building Bright Futures. I'm also a lover of strategic plans and of big picture thinking. A plan is like a strategic plan is like a roadmap. It makes sure that we are that everyone is in agreement about our common goals. It helps us reach them because if we are not in agreement, then we may end up in all different places, right? And it's also really our priority that that we use the plan, that it is not something that is produced that we love and then we put on a shelf, but that we are regularly using to be able to guide how we employ the resources that we have, and what are we moving towards, and how do we monitor progress. BBF monitors progress, is charged in our statute to be able to hold the strategic plan and to monitor progress. And we do that by gathering input throughout the year about how we're doing towards the goals and objectives and strategies in the plan. So really psyched that you're here with us today. In the past, we've used this meeting to inventory progress on the plan, to ask you to give us feedback on what's working in our system and how we are doing. And we have done a lot of that work in the last couple months, and we asked many of these questions around how are we doing and what are people's priorities and what are their needs in this community engagement process that you'll hear about. And so for that reason, today's meeting is not as much about inventorying progress, but it being able to understand our process to update the strategic plan and to get input on this first draft, which is super exciting. And also, as you'll hear, that the community engagement process really reflects BBF's commitment to center the voices of families and communities most impacted by the early childhood system and those who are experiencing it firsthand. So these have been our priorities, as you will hear in the work that we did to engage people across the state, wanting to talk to people who are experiencing homelessness, people who are in recovery from substance use disorder, or those who have mixed immigration status. There's been some really cool work, and not easy to be able to connect and engage with families, and that's been our priority. We will also hear about the work. So we'll hear about the community engagement, and then we'll break into some small groups to hear to move from the findings into strategies and priorities, as Morgan kind of shared. So from here, we're going to break. We're going to do a little bit of business. Flora is going to lead us through a quick roll call. And then we have one vote on the February SAC minutes, and then we'll be able to move into our presentation. So hold tight. Flora?
Thank you, Beth. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Flor Diaz-Smith, and I am the co-chair of Building Bright Futures. I'm here on behalf of Vermont School Boards Association, and I'm the private co-chair. We're going to put the order online too on the chat so that you know how we're going. I'm going to start with my co-chair, Elisa.
Good afternoon. Hi, everyone.
Okay, Vermont Department of Health. Janet from Child Development Division. And I don't see anybody because we have the screen. So I just see a small amount of you. So if you could just say hi.
Hi, everybody.
Quickly.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Gianna McLaughlin, DCF, CDD.
Thank you, Janet. Laurel from Department of Mental Health.
Hi. Morning. Good afternoon.
Tammy Bates from the Agency of Education.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon.
Laura, if you can pause for a sec, let's pull down the screen share while we go through a roll call.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm like trying to look there. Good. So we can see each other and be in community for a little bit. So Susanna Davis. I see you, Susanna. No baby. Okay. Renee Kelly from Head Start. Okay, Jessica Bittner from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. Carly Tebow. I'm not sure I'm saying that right.
She sent
Family Service. Okay. Monica Hott from the Governor's Office.
Everybody.
Hi, Monica. Oh, we can see you now. So now we're going to move now our legislators with the new legislative session. We have new appointments, and those are in the process of getting finalized. So who do we have? We don't have anybody with us today.
So our legislators send their regrets because they are still in session.
Still in session. Okay. Yeah, H454, which affects us, all of us, is right now being discussed. So having to concentrate on being here. Our private at-large members, Sharon Harrington.
Hey, everyone.
Christy Sutton from Capstone. Christy, are you here? I don't see you. No. Okay. Danielle Mitchell from Washington County Mental Health.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi. Now Carol Long got in from the Parent Child Center.
Good afternoon, Carol Langon, Vermont Parent Child Center Network.
Hi, Carol. And Dr. Deb Hartswick from
Yes, here.
There you are. Okay.
Good morning.
Eddie.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dr. Deb. Eddie Gale.
Hi, Eddie Gale. I work with the A.D. Henderson Foundation.
Thank you, Eddie. Kiona.
Hi, folks. Yep, Kiona here.
There you are. I thought I saw. Dimitri Carter from a business representative.
Yes, hi, everybody.
Oh, there you
I'm
are.
here. Good afternoon. Hi.
Hi. Becca Webb from the Berry Unified Union School District.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, Becca. Amber, a parent representative. I thought I saw you, Amber.
Good afternoon. I'm here.
Okay, there. Libby, a parent representative. I didn't see Libby.
She sends her regrets.
Okay. And Representative Ray Garofano, I think he's not here. And so I'm just going to skip that. Erica McLaughlin also said she's at the State House. And Monica from the Agency of Human Services. No, okay. Okay, so now let's move into a little bit of business. So I'm looking for a motion to accept the February 24, 2025 minutes.
I'll make a motion. Ms. Carol.
Thank you, Carol. A second?
I can second, Flora. It's Becca.
Thank you. Thank you, Becca. Any discussion, any amendments? Hope you had a chance to read them. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The minutes have passed, so.
I'll
Oh, we have
abstain
one
because
abstention, Laurel. Okay,
yeah,
you were
because
not
I'm
here.
new.
Okay, sounds good. So one abstention and then the minutes have passed, and I'm giving it back to you, Beth.
Yeah, thank you. So with our business behind us, thanks all for being efficient. Want to give folks a chance to introduce by who is part of the BBF network. We have a lot of people on this call, so we're making introductions in the chat, but also getting a sense that we have lots of folks who engage in the network in different ways. So I'm going to give you a chance if you are part, and if you're part of the network in many different ways, feel free to engage in as many ways as you want. But I'm gonna call out the different level of the BBF network, and if you're part of that, unmute and just say hey. We'll hear the collective chorus, and then you could re-mute and we will move on. So if you are part of a BBF regional council, unmute and say hey. We'd like to say hi to you this afternoon.
Hey.
Hey.
Awesome, thank you. If you participated or hosted one of our community conversations over the last couple months, unmute and say hey. We'd love to hear from you.
Hi, we did from Good Beginnings.
Great, thank you. If you participate in one of BBF's strategic plan committees, that might be the Child Outcomes Accountability Team or the Early Learning and Development Committee. There are several of them. We'd love to hear from you.
Hey.
Hey.
Beautiful, thank you. And before we move on, I just want to give a shout out to our committee co-chairs who help us usher the strategic plan through the VECAP committees. I know several of you are on the call. We have Sarah Morrison and Jen Fortman, Katie Leffel, Sherry Carlson, Dawn Rouse, Becky Millard, Lynn Robbins, as well as our SAC co-chairs, Flora and Elisa. Thank you so much for your leadership. Appreciate you all being here. And then moving on in the BBF network, if you're part of the BBF team, unmute and say hey.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Beautiful, thank you. And finally, if you're here with the Creative Discourse Group, these are our fabulous consultants supporting the update of the strategic plan. Invite you to unmute, and I'm going to hand it to you to make introductions and share an overview and key findings from that network engagement process.
Awesome. Hey. Thank you so much, Beth, and good afternoon, everyone. While Hannah brings the slides up, I'll just say a quick hello. My name is Dr. Nadia DeBose. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the co-founder and principal of the Creative Discourse Group. I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Reese Kelly, Strategic Design Lead and Associate of the Creative Discourse Group, who you'll hear from in just a moment. And together with Susan McCormick, TCDG co-founder and principal as well, and Dr. Molly Loomis, a TCDG associate, our team has really had the privilege of supporting the update of the Vermont Early Childhood Strategic Plan over the past year. At the Creative Discourse Group, we are a Vermont-based, justice-rooted consulting firm that partners with organizations and institutions to design inclusive systems, elevate community perspective, and drive meaningful change. We center equity and belonging in every phase of our work through facilitation, strategy, and organizational transformation. This is truly a moment of celebration. The work we've done alongside the incredible team at Building Bright Futures has been deeply meaningful, and we are thrilled to be here today sharing it with all of you. So when we say we're building a plan that centers family, we really meant it. This wasn't just about asking families for input. It was about showing up in ways that honored their time, their truths, and their leadership. And we rooted this process in the principle of reciprocity, that for every insight families gave us, we tried to give something meaningful in return, like time, attention, connection, and especially the promise that their voices wouldn't just be heard, but woven into the fabric of this plan update. We created opportunities that welcome people on their own terms, a photo booth where families could share what brings them joy, community conversations held in trusted spaces, facilitated by us and supported by people they know, a letter writing activity where families could speak directly to policymakers, and an immersive experience that allowed people at different junctions of the system to experience what it's like to sit in a different seat. And through these opportunities, we engaged with 92 parents, grandparents, and youth, and 103 early childhood professionals who brought deep insight from the front lines. Every one of these perspectives added richness, complexity, and truth to this process. This is what it means to build a system with families, not for them. And because families aren't just participants, they are partners, they are leaders, and they are vision holders.
Thank you for setting up the context for that, Nadia. Hi, everyone. I'm Reese Kelly, he, him, also with the Creative Discourse Group, and I was one of the main community conversation facilitators and data analysts on this project. So I'm going to bring you through some of the findings from the Network Engagement Project. If we go to the next slide, please. When we spoke with families across Vermont, one of the main things they communicated was what was going well for them, what was working, what were their strengths. We heard loud and clear that Vermont families are strong, resilient, and have pride in who they are and how they care for their families. We heard that they really value opportunities to connect with their communities, and they make use of these opportunities, especially when they are free or low cost and family friendly. We also heard from families that they value supportive and inclusive schools and early childhood programs where students of various backgrounds, cultures, and educational needs are treated with respect and dignity. And the families also emphasize that free universal school meals, food assistance, and other supports significantly help their family. Now, not only did they share the strengths of what's going well and what they have pride in, but they also shared with us many of the challenges that they're facing. If we could go to the next slide, please. Overwhelmingly, a dominant theme emerged around basic needs. Many Vermont families are in survival mode and face challenges with accessing and affording food, housing, childcare, transportation, and both physical and mental health care. And what caregivers experience as a result of the inaccessible, unaffordable, and/or inflexible childcare is that it disrupts their capacity to work and it disrupts their overall well-being of their family. Families also describe service systems as confusing, fragmented, and exhausting to navigate. They shared that education systems are not meeting the needs of all children, and they named explicitly racial bias, stigma around poverty and addiction, immigration challenges, and discrimination against people with disabilities as key barriers to accessing the support they needed. Last, families express that they crave more connection with extended family, with neighbors, and within their local community, and that for many, the opportunities, resources, and even just the time it takes to connect is lacking in their lives. So let's go to the next slide. They also brought forward clear ways about how they wanted to be a part of the solution, to be seen and treated as partners, and not just as passive recipients of decisions made without their input. They wanted a say at every level of decision making. Families not only want to be heard by leaders, they want to be invited to the table, they want to serve on boards, they want to be in leadership positions, and they want to run for elected office. But to do so, that means creating opportunities that recognize the unique needs and experiences of caregivers who also want to be a part of these decision-making conversations and in leadership roles. Similarly, families expressed interest in co-created and community-driven solutions that they could be a part of and that they could facilitate. But to truly participate in decision-making and to be fully engaged, families must first have their basic needs met.
Thank you, Reese. Next slide, please. Thank you, Reese, for walking us through these powerful truths. that the families shared with us. These are their strengths, their struggles, and their hopes. So what you see here in these ideas for change is how we honored and synthesized that feedback. These ideas for change reflect the major themes that surfaced across listening sessions and conversations, not just once, but across regions, identities, and roles. And they represent the conditions families told us must shift in order for Vermont's early childhood system to truly work for them. And these ideas formed the building blocks for the draft goals and strategies you'll explore today. And they range from expanding childcare across access and affordability, to supporting families' economic and social well-being, improving housing and transportation, ensuring accessible healthcare and mental health services, and creating more responsive and accountable systems. Families also emphasize the importance of building strong community connections, protecting and supporting families experiencing violence or incarceration, uplifting immigrant families, and creating real pathways for parent and community leadership. And so they helped us move from just listening to design, right? From the themes to actionable direction. And these are not small asks. These are deeply interconnected challenges, and they require shared commitment for a just and equitable early childhood system from all of us. Next slide. So all of this work, every story, every insight, every theme, along with TCDG's deep meta-analysis of over 48 additional data sources, including policy briefs, annual reports, needs assessments, and more, have been carefully translated into these 5 bold interconnected goals. Goal 1, that all children and families have their basic needs met. Goal 2, that all children are raised in safe and healthy environments. 3, that children and families have access to high quality opportunities that promote child development and well-being. 4, that we need to invest in the early childhood workforce to help kids thrive. And goal 5, that our system centers children and families and is coordinated, well-resourced, and data-driven. These goals are visionary, and they reflect what families and professionals and system leaders told us must be different. So today you'll have that chance to dig into one of these goals, and we hope that you'll honor the participation and the emotional labor of families with your deep engagement. We invite you to approach these goals not just with your strategic lens, but with your full heart and leadership. Because we're not just building a plan, we're building trust, we're building accountability, and we're building a more just future for Vermont's children and families. So with that, let's get into this part of our time today. I'll turn it over to Reese to get us set up.
Excellent. Thank you, Nadia. In order to get everyone's feedback who's a part of this call, and I can tell when you look, there are a lot of little faces in the Hollywood Square. So there are a lot of us here today. We designed an engagement opportunity that fosters dynamic, collaborative conversation and have set aside a good chunk of the time today for you to have conversations in smaller groups so that your voice can be heard, your feedback can be contributed to this draft of the strategic plan. So I want to walk us through what we're going to do next before you self-sort. Each of you on this call will self-sort into a group focused on either one of the 5 goals or opting into the family and caregiver affinity space. Because this group is so large, there are going to be 2 small breakout groups associated with each goal. So there will be goal 1A breakout group, goal 1B breakout group, and you are going to self-sort into them. And I believe Kate or Hannah is going to put the names of those in the chat so that you can see them and you'll know where to go. We're going to ask a few things of you before you sort into each of those groups, though. First, we ask that you pick a group and that you plan to stay there the whole time. So it's not going to be group hopping from goal 1 to goal 5 and so forth, that you'll be in there the whole time. So keep that in mind. Next, we ask that you choose to participate in a group that's focused on a goal that you had a chance to read and review in advance of today. So we did ask and send you materials in advance to prepare. That helps you give the most prepared feedback in that session. If you didn't do it, wing it, but we ask that you did prepare so that we hope you had some stuff to bring in mind. We also ask that you pick a group that's most relevant to your work and your role. So I know that you'll know what that means more than I do. You'll find out what group fits best. The last thing that 2 more things to ask of you. that you self-manage the size of each group. So if you want to focus on goal 1, you go into goal 1A group, and there are a ton of people in there, pop back out to the large group, get into goal 1B. So one group doesn't have 30 people and another group has 2. And I trust that you'll be able to go in, see if it's too big, and pop back out and go into another group. And you'll want to do it quick so that the groups get settled as soon as possible. The last thing that we ask is we really want to focus the discussion on the specific actionable strategies and to make sure you're capturing your notes in the shared notes doc that's going to be, you'll get the link once you're in the small group. Each of the groups will have a BBF facilitator in them, so they'll go back over some of these details, but I just want you to feel prepared and knowing what choice you're going to make into the group that you're going to sort into. So with that, I'm going to let Kate create the groups to let you jump all in.
They should be opening now.
Thanks, Kate.
And if anyone's having trouble with getting to the right group, feel free to just jump off mute and I can assign you.
Yeah, where do you find the groups?
They should have had a pop-up. But if you want to shout,
I didn't get a
Beverly's not
pop-up
seeing-
either, Dimitri, but
No.
when I look in the more ... there's a join breakout room that I think will help us out.
Okay,
So
thanks.
more ... join breakout room, I think will get us where we need to go. And then we can see them all if it didn't pop up, because I didn't either.
Great.
So.
Oh, thanks, Janet. That's helpful.
You're welcome. And look, we can see the numbers in there too. So helpful. Okay.
Got it. And feel free to just ask for a group and I can assign you if that's easier for you too. And Nadia and Reese, you have the ability to see the groups and pop in and out. Okay, great.
Yes, I'm just waiting for everyone and then Reese and I will.
So. Hannah, I'm going to pop into the parent caregiver affinity group and then I'll be back out to the main group.
So are we supposed to just hang out if we don't have a group assigned?
You are to self assign yourself a group.
I know. I don't see where I'm supposed to do that.
Beverly,
I to the board.
Yeah, I can put you in a group if you'd like.
And I don't have an invite. Oh, here we go. Join breakout room. I see. Okay, I see. Sorry.
That's okay.
Hi, I need a room too, please. Thank you.
Michelle, what room would you like to join?
The workforce, one of the workforce ones, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, this is Heather Smyers.
Oh, sure.
Is it okay if I go in the same one as Michelle?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. It looks like Jocelyn, do you need help getting into a room? Okay, I'm not sure if Jocelyn's here, so I'm just going to go join my room.
Okay.
Nadia, can you remind me which rooms you're planning to go in?
I was going to do 1 and 2 and the caregiver group, but now that I think we may want to think about it a little differently because of, well, here, see, in groups. So recruiting. Okay. Yeah, so thank you for your discussions, your thoughtful discussions. Reese and I were able to pop into some of the groups and get a sense of where you all are at. Lots of different things happening, lots of different strategies and conversations. That was really interesting and insightful. So now as we return to this full group, we have about 30 minutes or so of time. We'd love to hear from each group and then maybe hopefully a few more of you if we have time. Just thinking across all of the questions that your group explored and wondering what emerged as most meaningful insight, or perhaps the clearest opportunity for collaboration or action or systems change. And in particular, as we again are trying to get at drill down to specifics, what will it take from you or your organization or this network to help move that work forward? So we invite you to share reflections that can maybe spark some momentum and deepen our shared accountability pieces. Is there a group that would like to start us off? We can go from 1 through 5, or I think anyone can jump in, anyone that's prepared.
I can start as Nadia.
That's great. Thank you.
Our group covered goal 2, which is, sorry, I have to scroll a little bit here. All children are raised in safe, healthy, and healing environments. And some of the overall impressions were that people were appreciative of how bold the VECAP is in not backing down on some areas that we might see other organizations backing down on. And so that was a really nice starting point. There were some great conversations about incorporating some of the things that the Surgeon General has called out in his letter from back in, I think it was the fall, about how parents are really struggling right now and need additional supports, and how do we work that into our goals. Also, making sure to center all of this work on parents and caregivers as being the experts with their children. Some of the language used in goal 2 talks about ensuring that families are involved in identifying their needs, and the feeling was that that language should really be strengthened to focus on families as experts of their children's needs. Also, some suggestions for combining and refining a few of the strategies. And yeah, just great conversation with our group. Is anybody else from our group want to weigh in on anything that we discussed or something I might have missed?
Thank you, Michelle. How about another group? What emerged as most meaningful insight?
This is Valerie. I can go next. So I was one of the group 5 facilitators, and we had a similar reflection to something Michelle just shared, which is, wow, there's a lot in here. And are there ways to kind of, combine some of the objectives or strategies? In some ways, it seemed like maybe some of the material across the different objectives was duplicative. So just kind of going back and thinking of it from that lens. People in the discussion said they appreciated that we are thinking broadly and there are bold statements in there, but in particular with goal 5, there's kind of 3 very distinct goals within a goal, and so some encouragement to go back and look at that again and make sure it makes sense to have those 3 kind of sub goals combined there, or is there a better, more efficient way to talk about those goals? That we're not pursuing data for data's sake, but we're trying to build policies and structures that are data driven, to be cautious of suppression of data due to small sample sizes, and how does that obscure what we know about the experiences of different groups of Vermonters from different backgrounds, and kind of masking disparate impacts. And then that we want to represent the Vermont we hope to have, not the Vermont we have always had. So really that future thinking, vision, orientation. The last thing I'll share is we talked about how can we identify the people in spaces that hold accountability and responsibility for moving the plan forward and contributing to the goals.
Thank you.
Nadia, I can do a botched up version of one, and then my colleagues who are in that can offer critique. We kind of started out with this like of reading goal one and thinking about the breadth of the vision and the lift that is represented in that. I will speak for myself. It also was a very sobering moment to think about the national challenge that we have and how it intersects with goal one. And so just feeling grounded in the moment. But there was also this celebration of thinking about what we've done and invested in. We're talking at the end about measuring success. And we talked about the 2,000 families on CCFAP since the passage of Act 76. And we've talked about the family who said they could put a roof on their house because they were CCFAP eligible. And we talked about all of these different metrics that we already have in place, and some that we don't know of if they're in place, and we documented them. So it kind of felt both painful and beautiful. It also felt like there were systems that needed to be tested, because on paper, our systems in some places are really, they look clear. And sometimes when you test those systems out, they don't function the way that we expect them to. And so what might be some strategies to streamline some of the systems that we hope work better?
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm happy to go
next.
Oh, where are you, Kelly? I can see you. You can go.
So yeah, we were also with goal one. Sorry, I'm gonna read the goal out. Let me move my arrow here. The all children and families have their basic needs met. And we talked kind of the same sentiments that Jamie just explained of like, wow, there's a lot here. And it's very like a lot of high level. So like where can we kind of drill down a little bit and what partners are already working on this and kind of or need to be pulled into the conversation. We did talk about how, you know, the basic needs in general are so interconnected. Like you can't talk about food security without talking about transportation, without talking about housing, and how like we all need to be involved in those conversations with one another. And so some of the things, you know, we also talked about are the resources that already exist, but how families might not know about them, might not have access. So really kind of supporting like what do we have in place already, and you know, trying to help further spread that information. So just thinking about like 211, like what are ways that we can share information about that so that families do know that it's a resource that they can access. And just looking at like, are there too many ideas here? Like, do we need to prioritize and like really focus in more like narrow scope so that we can, and who's doing what? Like kind of looking at, you know, not only who's missing, but who's already working on these. And, how are they measuring the success of these goals? And, kind of, so instead of reinventing the wheel, like where there are other places we can align around these goals. And anybody from that group, feel free to chime in if I missed anything.
Thank you, Courtney.
I can jump in for the goal 2, the second group for goal 2, if this is a good time for that. So goal 2, all children are raised in safe, healthy, and healing environments. And I think our group also, is that toggle between, wow, this is ginormous and big, and then, but when we break down health into 3 subcategories that are health, mental health, and substance use treatment, that like maybe that's too much breaking down, and like you can't necessarily separate mental health from substance use treatment and mental health from physical health. So just a lot of acknowledgement of the challenge of framing a document that is really strong and relevant and actionable. I think within the goal itself, there was a couple of sort of highlight threads to pull out of the conversation, and I welcome any of the members of the group to weigh in on this. But one of the things that I heard really clearly was just the opportunity to center primary care as a hub for when we have really strong, robust primary care that has strong relationships to mental health and to substance use, that those referrals can happen. And again, the opportunities when those referrals happen, the system operates really efficiently, right? Because families aren't going through a bunch of different front doors to get care, and recognizing there's challenges to that kind of partnership and that referral process happening. So those are some of the themes that we tugged on, and then just also having an eye on not just moving forward and making sure that we continue to make progress in these areas where Vermont has made some really good progress, but also making sure we don't lose ground in the current federal context that we're in. So where are some spaces around immunizations, around the difference between Medicaid and private pay health insurance that we should be tending to in this next 5-year period to make sure investments that we've made are not lost.
Martha, I'll just add to that. We also talked about OB providers as, in addition to pediatric, as a way to get that really preventative connection to early relational health services and flexible continuum of services to meet families' needs early as possible. And we also, similar to Valerie and her group, talked about kind of consolidating some of the goals or the bullets and kind of everything under that high quality health care, including health, mental health, and substance use. Yeah. We had a great discussion.
Awesome. Other groups?
I was leading one of the goal 3 groups, which I'll invite folks to speak up if they have anything to add. So goal 3 language reads, all children and families have access to high quality opportunities that promote child development and well-being. And I think we started with an appreciation that equity and access is prominent throughout the language here, more so than it used to be. And so I think there's an appreciation that there's that equity is a focus, especially in this goal. One of the other things that we kind of wrestled with was how much do we need to call out what the barrier is in order to be able to state what the strategy is to respond to that barrier. I think there's a number of areas here where we're talking about, pre-K access, or we're talking about access to special education services, or use of suspension and expulsion, and how much do we need to call out kind of what's the problem that a strategy is needing to respond to, and how specific do we get? And also being able to call out if the strategy is directed towards any particular body, you know, is it directed to a supervisory union or to, you know, an agency in the state that needs to build policy, or to service providers that so we talked about some potentials for coding, so that people could review and better understand what that kind of strategy language is directed at. There's a lot more. I don't know if folks want to add, but it was a great discussion.
Thanks, Beth. Anyone else in that group, or is another group ready? How about anyone who worked on goal 4?
I can go for goal 4. So my group was one of the goal 4 workforce groups. I think there was general excitement about having a workforce specific goal in this iteration of the strategic plan. We also talked quite a bit about some themes related to kind of, I would say like system navigation, but system navigation from the workforce perspective. So particularly for early childhood educators, how to make their experience with both career preparation as well as ongoing PD a more seamless one. We also talked about feeling as though we need to think more about how to elevate potential alignment in the needs and strategies for supporting workforces across the early childhood system, so beyond early childhood educators, how some of the needs of other workforces. We talked quite a bit about the importance of recruiting more to the early childhood mental health workforce, and how some of those needs and strategies might be similar to those of the early childhood education workforce. And then we talked, it sounds like there's a similar thread to other groups. We talked about kind of the current moment we're in, and what that means for the importance of protecting funding for programs that we know are successful in supporting the workforce, as well as how that changes our thinking and strategies potentially around pursuing programs that are sustainable, and able to be funded going forward. So those are some of our high level themes.
Thank you.
Hi, Nettie Gale. I was going to throw in a few comments from the other group. One would just be sort of language and editing in relation to the higher education opportunities, that we can just break it down to tuition, that we opportunity of choice, that we actually have a higher education infrastructure that can deliver. And I think the other is that we have a second tier of professional development that can be more supportive in the day-to-day. Other big piece in relation to compensating early educators, I was leery of having a list of a number of different little tweaks that somebody could try to implement to try to lift the profession up, when what we really need to do is recognize the profession and compensate it appropriately, and that every early care and education business should have the income stream that they need to provide for their employees, just like any other business does, and that there should be no expectation that we provide quality early care and education on the backs of early educators, that they should be appropriately compensated. And I believe Act 76 is a long ways toward that, and we probably need to move further. So I would be leery of a very long list of like individual little strategies that are maybe good ideas for somebody else to do. And I would also go back to, I think, the origins of some of the early childhood planning with the Race to the Top grant. The very first plan, every strategy had somebody who said, yes, I'm going to make that happen. And I would recommend that any strategy in this plan has somebody that says, yes, I'm going to make that happen.
Thank you, Eddie. Yes. Yes, to that last point. I think there's another group that had no, there's one group 5. So I think we've had all the groups represented in this, at least this first iteration. We have about 10 more minutes. So I welcome additional conversations, and in particular, one of the pieces that came up actually for us earlier when Reese and I kind of checked in after sort of bopping into some of the groups, kind of extends to what Eddie you just said at the end, which is around who is responsible, where, so how, when we think about how you can see these strategies, whichever of them end up in this strategic, this plan, this actionable plan, who are the folks that are going to do this, right? Because there are lots of questions, right, around this is so big and overwhelming, and like who is responsible? And that's the question that I think that I want to pose back as you start to think about responsibility and accountability. And if it's not exactly who and what, systems and orgs, but how do you get closer to understanding that piece, right? So I wonder if there are any reflections here around that. If we get a little bit more drilled down and specific, any example that you can think of and where you see that that is possible, where you can name something or a particular challenge that's coming up around that, I think would be a great starting point to kind of open the door to the dialogue to get more specific. Anything rise up for any of you?
Nadia, can I ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely.
Are you asking us to identify like things that were listed as strategies where there are barriers that are systemic barriers?
I asked a couple of I asked a couple of broad questions, right? Because I didn't want to direct this in a pointed way. But really what the idea is, there's a question about how do you get to these strategies? You have an action plan. How do you know, right? Eddie just asked us at the end of what they offered, right? So how do you achieve any of these strategies? And if you're seeing particular barriers in the groups that you sat in to achieving strategies that were listed as suggested strategies, what were they? Right? So just any thoughts along those lines, right? There are a lot of goals, there are a lot of strategies, there are a lot of people who can be pinpointed, but just what's coming up for you when you start to think about the who, right? We heard some of it, right? We heard a lot of angst. I'll just name that, right? We heard some angst around like, this is so big. How would this even get done? Who do we name? But what else, if any, if, more of that, if that's where you are at, or anything else that comes up. Does that make sense, Becca?
It does. It does. I think there's places, right, where multiple organizations hold the onus to it, right? Where like these are unified strategies or goals that multiple of our work worlds touch into, right? And so I struggle to be like, oh, this is going to be this organization's, right? Like label accountability here. I think there are also pieces where, because of the way that our Vermont systems are placed, right, and built upon, there are these places where we can work on it on the individual level, right? But we also need to have a like, this is how, as Vermont in XYZ, we're going to operate, right? I think, one of the examples that came up in our group, and I'll own it for bringing it up to our group, around we were goal 3 around the UPK, right? When we're talking about equality and access and making systems easier for families, one of the strategies that was listed was like this unified registration form system collection of identifying pieces. And I think where I bounce up against the system, right, is we're a local control for education, right? And so every school district in the state decides what is the thing or things that they want their pre-K to 12 registration system to be, right? So we don't have a unified understanding as a state. So I think that's kind of where I see that, right? Like there are some pieces that like we could have unified guidance and an attached accountability partner, or there are these pieces where like, of course we're all in, right? About like increasing the workforce. Those are just things I see.
Yeah. Thank you, Becca.
If I could also kind of say something there, along the lines of transparency and where we can find data, in the state and have it easily accessible so we know, who's referring to, different programs and making sure that, we are providing, information like Vermont Family Network doesn't really do personal advocacy work anymore. So who is going to be taking up that that area to support families that need, to have their children go through, evaluation processes and, those types of things. So just around transparency of who's available, where's the data, and is it up to date and accurate within the last year, or is it pre-COVID data that you can find only? So those are some things that I think might help.
Thank you.
This is Valerie. I want to lift up a comment that was shared by Emily Smith, who had to jump off early, but she noticed that at least for goal 5, if you look at some of the specific strategies, some of them could actually be mapped out kind of in a stepwise progression. So which of those strategies does it make sense to focus on earlier in the 5-year time period? And then when they're complete, you shift your efforts in year 2, in year 3, in year 4. So you are making progress according to, what she called a roadmap that leads you closer to the Vermont we're envisioning. So I thought that was a fascinating idea to consider. And then just my own perspective that I'll share is when I look at the language, a lot of you know I'm an advocate for plain language, and so the language is fairly complex, and I think there would be a lot of value add of breaking down these complex sentences and ideas into really concrete, specific, actionable statements, so that way you have a sense of what is the very next step that gets us to that larger, broader goal?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Valerie. I think we have time for one more contribution, and then after that, I'll turn it back over to the BBF team. Anyone else with something that you... I see Matt, I see your hand. We'll go Matt, then Janet, and then I'll turn it over.
Great. I'll try to be brief. I think, Nadia, I was trying to process your prompt. I think the question of who is going to do the activity in question and how's it going to be, what's the accountability and so on. This is something that has been a long time question for this process and previous iterations. And I think it spans across all the different issues. You could look at each of the different individual items and come up with a storyline that gets into this point. I think it also leads to the idea that if once it becomes clearer, once the group or organization's identified that may well be the lead working on the issue, it starts a very productive conversation where that organization or individual, whatever, will have something to say about the issue and how it's articulated, which then could lead to further revision and ownership and a sense of connection that I think will be very helpful for the document. So that could prompt an ongoing process that I know the folks at BBF have in mind of making the document even more responsive, more richer, but also increasing that accountability sense that I think a lot of us feel is not yet finalized in a number of these items.
Yep. Yes, we have a long way to go. Thank you. Janet?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer an appreciation because I really liked some of the framing content at the beginning of the goals that were really rooting us in the why of each of the goals. And I think that is something that to me feels clearer than in previous versions of the plan. And I think also offers a good checkpoint for like, what are the strategies? Like, are they addressing the thing that's up there in the why for each of those questions? But I just wanted to offer that I found those to be really helpful. And that I think some of the strategies might have, we talked a little bit about, you know, some of the strategies are saying what the action is, and some of the strategies are saying like what the results of the action should be. And just trying to figure out, like, is there something about using the sort of the value statement at the beginning to help get the way through. But totally agree that with also the other comments that have been made around the need for to identify who might be responsible for something to be included. But I really appreciated all of this thinking coming together. It's a pretty really strong draft.
Wonderful. Thank you, Janet, and thank you to all of you. Your contributions have been incredible today. And certainly I know for myself and even this dialogue, and when we popped into the groups and Reese and I, there will be so much, and there will be more opportunities, and you'll hear more about that. So at this point, I will just pass it right back over to Kate to help you understand that a little bit better.
Thank you, Nadia and Reese, and thanks so much everyone for their contributions today. And so my main takeaway in the last 10 minutes that we have here is just to reiterate that we are opening a process today that's going to carry on throughout the summer to continue to gather feedback, just like what we did here today, and to really honor that this is just a draft and we are continuing to improve upon it, taking in all the feedback from today and throughout, particularly the next month in June. So, and to start, I want to again shout out the amazing work of the Creative Discourse Group, who have done so much of the drafting and writing, and honor that because of we're bringing in the expertise of Creative Discourse Group, it allowed us to think more expansively and to use bolder language, and also for the BBF staff to be in a similar place as where we all are today, thinking critically about how best to revise our language and tweak it so that it really lines up in the fall when we get to a final draft to really be the best that it can be, to be aligned with what we heard so clearly from folks on the front lines and from families, and to continue to match with our values. So I'm going to share in the chat a web page on the BBF webpage that you can get to. You can save that webpage link, or you can get to it through the VECAP, the strategic plan link on our website. And on this webpage, you will find ways to continue to engage in this process throughout the summer. So the first thing is the small group notes that we taken today. If you have more to contribute, if something, as you're processing the discussion today over the next couple of weeks, feel free to go back to that document and add to it. We will continue to use those small group notes discussions to inform our revisions and edits over the next few weeks. So that's one place to continue to add to the goal that you were in today. If you are wanting to contribute to a different goal or to continue to be part of this discussion, on that web page, you'll see a calendar of different meetings we have coming up in the month of June, where one of these goals, or sometimes two of these goals, will be on the agenda for discussion. The feedback format will look very similar to today, but this is an opportunity to dive deeper into specifics on goal 1, specifics on goal 3. If you were in goal 1 today and you want to contribute to goal 2, then at that link you can find when we will talk more about goal 2 in particular, goal 4, whatever the goal is you're looking for. Also on that webpage, there's a feedback form. This is just a Google form that says, share with us your thoughts on either individual goals or the overall draft. And again, we will periodically check that. And we're going to do a very intentional job of tracking all the feedback we receive, both BBF staff and the Creative Discourse staff, And we're going to come together and use the subcommittee of the State Advisory Council, which is the VECAP advisory group, which is a number of folks here on the call today, on the SAC and BBF staff, to review the feedback that we've received, to prioritize it and screen the feedback for how it aligns with the monitoring work that we do at BBF and how, the themes that came up from our network engagement with families and with early childhood professionals over the last few months. So throughout the month of June, you can continue to engage in our upcoming meetings. That feedback form will be available for you between meetings. You can email me directly. My email's on the webpage as well. And then in July and August, we have those checkpoints at the VCAP advisory group to digest this feedback, report out, and be really intentional and transparent in the ways that we are incorporating your feedback and all the feedback we receive over the next few weeks. So with that, Beth, Morgan, or anybody else on BBF staff, do you want to add anything to that process and close us out?
Yeah. This has been great. It's just really great to come together and get the feedback. I just have one more piece of an invitation and reminder as we close out. In addition to this process to update the strategic plan, we also have a June State Advisory Council meeting scheduled on June 10th. That meeting's focus is to provide input on a process to re-envision the Agency of Human Services and the Department of Children and Families early childhood systems. And this is related to a legislative report that AHS is working to gather input and guidance. And so this is an opportunity for they approached us if they could engage with the State Advisory Council to be able to give input. It's a conversation that we have been having. We've had systems and governance conversations a lot over the last couple of years. So it's an opportunity for you to elevate those discussions to help influence their report. So that meeting is on June 10th. And in addition, while the State Advisory Council is for the most part kind of has a systems and political role, it also serves as the board for the Building Bright Futures organization. And so we are also presenting the BBF FY26 budget at that meeting. And then there is one other kind of organization governance piece that is happening that we will be sharing via email the updated bylaws for the organization with the State Advisory Council members. And we're actually going to invite a vote via email on that because there's so much going on in June. So we can put the registration link in the chat. That invite will be going out later this week and folks are invited to join us. Thanks, Kate, for getting that out there. So with that, thanks for being here. We appreciate your input and your engagement and hope you have a great afternoon.